One of the best ways to improve your email open rates at a church is to learn to segment your list so you're communicating with different groups within the community, to stop saying everything to everyone and to start saying different things to different groups of people. Hey there, it's Matthew Warner, and this is the Finding Uno Show. Welcome to the Finding Uno Show. Who's Uno? Oh, you know Uno. He's that one lost sheep that the shepherd leaves the 99 to go after, and we are here to help you find him. I'm your host, Matthew Warner, and I'm joined by my co-host, Matthew Sewell. Howdy, Matt.
Hey, what's happening?
Oh, not too much. Excited for another episode here of the Finding Uno Show. Today, we are talking about segmenting lists, why it's important, and how it's one of the biggest tactics you can use to improve your open rates and the way you are reaching and communicating with your people.
Yeah, I think this is a really good topic, and frankly, one that's probably underappreciated, maybe, especially with churches. I mean, we're at the hopefully at the tail end of the COVID business, but we've seen so many churches who have never ventured into the realm of digital communication, whether it's updating their email or updating their website, or venturing into email and texting, all that sort of thing. And I think necessarily because everything was shut down and everybody did need to know the urgent things going on at the church, it's been I would say an okay default to send everything to everybody in urgent times. But normally, and there will be a normal, I know we've been throwing around new normal a lot, but like things will go back to some semblance of normal at some point. And even now, though, I think we definitely need to not be just defaulting again to beat the same drum that we beat on lots of different episodes of being super intentional and not just saying, okay, I got a message, I got to get it out to as many people as possible. It's just a really bad way and really short-term way of thinking. So I think this is a really important topic to be covering.
Well, it's interesting you said as churches come into digital, because it reminds me that a lot of the traditional ways that the church has communicated, and when you think about sort of moving from mass media to new and social media in different ways, the opportunities there are to segment groups and lists, that now I don't just have to say the same thing to everybody. I can say one thing to this group and I can say something different to this group. And that's part of the opportunity. And a lot of the tools that churches have used traditionally have not had that ability. So take the bulletin, for example. So the bulletin is saying everything to everyone, right? So it's got a little something in there for everybody. But one of the reasons it's open rate, in a sense of how many people will actually get the information that you put inside it, is so low. Like 1 to 10% of people that you give it to are going to open it up and actually read through it all, is because they know that most of the information in it is not for me. So I have to dig through 95% of the information to find the 5% that actually pertains to me. And so that's a lot of work for the value I get out of it. It's the same with announcements. So announcements on Sunday are to everybody. And so we've started announcing, in many cases, saying everything to everyone in the announcements. And it's the reason why we've trained them to tune out announcements, because announcements start and immediately in their head, they tune it out. They start doing something else. They're thinking about something else. Why? Because we've trained them that 95% of those announcements are not for me. So when you're getting up and you're announcing something that could be just for the altar servers to everybody, you're wasting everybody else's time, and you're hurting the communication relationship with those people, because you're training them that sometimes the things that you're telling me are not for me. So I'm going to start tuning it out. And if I learn that most of the stuff you're telling me is not for me, then most of the time, then I'll tune you out all of the time. That's the trouble. So because most of it is not for me, I tune you out all of the time because I don't know when to listen and when not to. And so those are some of the challenges of the old traditional ways of communicating. But now the opportunities are that you can say something just to a particular group of people. So when you're sending out the altar server schedule, you don't send that to everybody. You send it to just the altar servers and their parents, or whoever you need to within that needs to know that information. And so this is one of the most important ways that we increase the value of our emails. So we've talked about in the past improving your email relationship and improving your open rates. The number one reason people open that email in the first place is that relationship you've built with them, that every time I open that email, it's worth my time. It's valuable to me. And so segmenting lists is one of the key tools to doing that, because now I can actually take the information that's not for that person and send it, and not send it to them, and send it only to the group that needs it. And so now the communications that person does get from me is only things that will hopefully be valuable to that particular person.
So what do you say when somebody's like, "Oh, I have 20 jobs at the church, and I don't have time to list segment. It's just like too bad, so sad." What would you say to a person who's like, "I don't have time to to segment out my list, or I don't even know where to start"?
Well, so we'll get it. We're going to go into in a minute here. We'll talk about some of the ways you can start segmenting these lists that I think answers that question in some really easy ways. That it doesn't necessarily take time to do this. It's something that you build into the way you build your communications infrastructure. That it already makes it easier for you to do that without taking extra time. But also, I would say, if you have time to write emails that nobody reads, then I would assume you have time to make a small tweak that's going to actually get more people reading it. And then it'll actually be more worth your time to write those emails. But it also sometimes can take more time. We've talked about that before. It takes time to cater and curate the information that you put into a communication to make sure that it's worthy of this channel, that it's intentional, it's deliberate. We know what it's there for. And that's part of the problem too, with a lot of communications that we've just been doing a while, whether it's something that you put in the bulletin a long time ago and it just keeps getting copied over and over and over again. And years later, it's still there. And nobody's asking the question is, should that be there anymore? Is it that important that it should be put there? Is it achieving its purpose? Is it achieving what we put it there to do? And asking those questions regularly. So you have to take communications really seriously if you want to be good at it, and you can't be a good leader if you're not taking communication seriously. It's that lifeblood of your leadership is communication. So it's really important that you do take the time, but I also think that it doesn't have to take a lot of time, and we're going to talk about some of those ways here in a minute.
Yeah, I can think of a couple examples where I've always liked the. I remember it occurred to me. I was talking to a friend of mine who was going to help a church in my area redo their bulletin, which is one of those like 6-7 pages, 9-point font, like black and white, just horrendous. Like makes anybody who is new to. I mean, it's just like not a good experience. And I was like, oh, I wonder. Like the church should set aside $500 and say, like, put a little line on page 5, right in the middle of a giant block of text, and say, the first 10 people who read this, call their office and we'll give you $50 and see how much of that money you actually give away. Just as a hypothetical test, right? That's like a paper example. But then like I can think of a large organization who shall remain nameless, whose newsletter is like little teeny tiny font, and it's from a communications office, and it's supposed to be newsy or whatever, but it's kind of the same thing. And I don't even know why I still stay subscribed to it, just because I'm intrigued to see if they ever change it. But like it's just a terrible example, right? And that's like, I guess that's maybe a little beside the point of list segmentation, but it's just one of those things where like, let's put as much stuff in this one thing as possible, because I don't have the time, or I don't want to take the time to do something.
Yeah. And I think another reason they do it is that you have a group of really engaged people at your church. And so they actually like getting the email that has everything in it, because they're involved in everything and they want to know everything that's going on. So part of what you have to do is decide with each communication is, who are we trying to reach with this? Again, that's part of the segmentation part of this as well. But who are we trying to reach? Because what will happen is you'll cut some of that stuff out of your email that has everything in it right now every week. And you'll get some people to go, hey, where's that other stuff? I really liked having all that in there. And you go, oh man, we should put that back in. But the problem is that feedback loop that you're getting is from that most engaged group of people that they want all that stuff in there. So make sure, who is this for? Who are you listening to know whether it's working or not? Because if you're just listening to that most engaged group of people, yeah, they don't need it segmented because they want everything. They're involved in everything. But if you really are trying to reach all the other people that aren't yet engaged in a lot of things, that aren't involved in everything yet, that aren't as deeply plugged in to your community yet, you have to speak differently. And that means usually saying less and making sure that the stuff you do say resonates with those particular people. And then you pull that other stuff out and you send it to just the folks that are plugged into those particular things. And so again, you'll have a small group of people that'll say, oh, now I get 3 different emails with all that information. I wish you would just send me one email with all the stuff in it. And so there's a temptation to want to go back and put it all in one to make those people happy. But resist that temptation, because it's a very small group of people that want all 3 of those things all in one email. That's a particular person that's involved in all 3 of those things. But most people are not involved in all 3 of those things. And so if you want to maximize the value of every communication you send, which that's the goal, every communication you send, you want to maximize its value, that the chances of that person reading it going, yeah, I'm glad I read that. That was a good use of my time. In order to do that, you got to start segmenting this stuff out and sending the right information to the right people.
That's it. I mean, it goes without saying for you and me, but I mean, you have to remember that it's like, if you're having this conversation in the first place, there's something already wrong, right? If you have the desire to do better, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I was like watching one of those, failing restaurant shows, makeovers or whatever, and the food was terrible. And so then like the chef came in and, redid all the things and, redesigned the restaurant, and like a bunch of new people came in. They're like, man, it's so good. And one of the owner's like old buddies was like, man, I really wish you hadn't changed the menu. I just loved all of the old food. And it's like, his restaurant was failing, right? There's the one guy who said, oh, I wish you would have kept it the same, but like he would have gone broke if he would have listened to his friend. And I think they did end up going broke, sadly, because he probably listened to his friend, right? Yeah. So I mean, like, acknowledge that there is a problem and there has to be something good, and it's okay to lean into the risk a little bit, because you can have faith that there's going to be something good on the other side. So I guess, moving into the maybe practical applications of it, what are some practical ways that churches can start to do this really easily?
So good question. So the some of this is built into how you've built your communications in the first place. So you may already have something like Flocknote and have all these capabilities, or you may not have any of these capabilities yet. And so you're going to have to look at, getting some tools that can help you do it. But the few basic ways, I kind of break them down this way. The first is sort of by association. So this is kind of the most basic, straightforward thing. It's what groups or ministries is this person involved in? And this will get you a long way there. This will get you a really long way there, where you have your, if you're involved in youth ministry, great. Here's the youth ministry list. If you're an altar server, here. If you're a lector, here. So you have these different groups, and if you need to send something to them, send it only to them. So that may seem obvious to a lot of you, but for a lot of churches, they're not to that point yet. They're still sending everything to everybody. So breaking it up by groups, that's the first part. Second is now communicating based on sort of characteristics or other data you have on those people. So maybe you need to send something by age, or by sex, or by zip code, or by when their baptism date is, or they have a wedding anniversary coming up, or a baptism anniversary coming up. Or maybe in your registration process, you've got a question in there with like, which ways would you like to volunteer? Oh, I'd like to take up sit down on Sunday. I can help with special events. Right? So you have this additional data that now you can say, okay, I want to only send a message to men that are over the age of 18 and are also, involved in some group, right? Or people who volunteered to say, I don't need to email everybody saying, who can help us, take up and take down and set up and take down this Sunday, right? I have a group of people that have already said, I'm open to that. So you only email those people asking for that help, okay? And then finally, you get to more advanced stuff. And this is some of the really exciting stuff we're doing at Flocknote now, which is sort of activity-based or action-based segmenting. So now you can send a message only to a group of people that have given to your capital fund already, or have not given yet, or are already giving in regular offertory, or are not giving to our offertory, but are also engaged with multiple ministries in your community, and are opening emails and everything else, right? So you can combine those different factors together, so that you now have a really niche group of people of just the people you want to reach. So people who just showed up or are new to the parish, people who haven't opened an email in 6 months. Okay, so these are different groups, and so the idea of saying different things to different people is essential to getting good open rates, building relationships with those people, but ultimately to achieve the end, to achieve what the purpose is of your communication. If you want to improve your relationship with people who are kind of drifting out of your community, well, you don't send a message to everybody asking for money. You send that group of people an invitation to come check something out, or you reach out to them and invite them to something, right? But you'd say something totally different to a group of people that are really engaged, opening emails, already giving and supporting your church financially, all those things. So segmenting your communications, the types of message you send to those different groups of people, is doable now. This is totally possible. This is built into what we do at Flocknote. It's all there. All this data is there. And now you just have to think through, how do we use it to achieve our goals and our mission in our church?
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, and there might be the lingering question, right? Of, well, what do I use the all church email list for? And I would say it's okay, one, to use it. I think a good rule of thumb is probably, if it applies to, what would you say, 60%, 70% or more of your church, then it's okay to put in there. But then also to drive traffic to those other groups. So I mean, that's another thing that we have, built into Flocknote to make easy. But I mean, just to be able to give them an opportunity to say, okay, we have an altar servers group that we're sending to regularly, but once a year, twice a year, whatever. Hey, we're looking for new ushers. We're looking for new, greeters,
Yeah.
or whatever it might be. So click here to join that list, and then we'll send it to you more often, because we're trying to preserve this list to only send to you once, once a week, or once a month, or whatever it might be.
That's a really good point you're bringing up, because the if you are struggling with what to put in that message to everyone, I think it's a good time to do some soul searching of, what are you all about? What is that transcendent third, the mission, the cause? Like, what is the bigger thing that your community is here for? Because that message to everyone, it should be obvious. What are you doing as a community? What's our unity? Too often I think church communities become this, like, a lot of small groups of all people doing these different little things within the community. And over time, when you first start, it's obvious. We're going to go build a building. We're growing the community. We're reaching out to new people. We're adding these new things that we need. We're adding this program. We're, doing sort of the essential things that aren't there yet. We're building those and putting them in place. But once it's established, too often that kind of fades a little bit. And all of a sudden it becomes lots of little groups doing lots of things together. And you can lose the inspiration of why everyone's together in this in the first place. So it's that, hey, everyone, let's go do this big thing. What is it? And if you don't have an essence of that in every communication that's going out to everyone, I think we're missing something. We're missing an opportunity. And I think maybe we've let something fade away that should be energizing people again to stay plugged in, to go deeper, and then do what, like you said, is take that opportunity now to funnel them deeper. You're excited about this thing. We're doing this big thing together. Here's some other little ways you can use your unique gifts to get plugged in a unique way within a subgroup or ministry within the community, to then fulfill the big thing. But if the big thing's not there, then what are the little things for? And so putting those in the context is really important part of that regular communication. And I think when you get that right, everything else falls into place really well. And it seems kind of obvious what to say. But if you're struggling with what to say and what to put in, I think sometimes it's because that big thing is kind of faded into the background a little bit. And so it's a good chance to think about how you recover that and make sure you're communicating that as a leader.
Yeah, 100%. Awesome. Well, that's a perfect cap for our topic for today. We're going to bounce over. We got time for one question from a listener for our People Got Church Problems segment. So we're going to head over there. Okay, for our question today, this I think it'll tie in perfectly with our topic. So Claire asks, my biggest frustration, and not what you at Flocknote can fix, is how few people open, read, and pay attention to their emails. I increasingly have to use texts where in the past I would have used an email. What do I do?
Well, Claire, we're trying to help you fix that, and I think it is with a lot of these better email practices. So we've talked about that temptation before, where it's announcements aren't working, bulletins not working. We're going to start emailing it to people. Email's not working. We're going to start, getting on every social platform we can. And that's not working. We go to the next social media platform. That's not working. We're getting an app. We're texting it. We think the next thing, the next big thing is just around the corner that's going to fix all our problems. There's a temptation that to just switch tools is somehow going to fix it. That's part of it. Here is that you're getting more disruptive. So going from email to text, you're getting more disruptive with your communication. And so it can appear to work, because it does. It works short term. Oh, you didn't read my email. I'm going to text the email to you now and give you a link to read the rest of it or whatever. And now everyone read it, And so if you're and this is again, the trap of kind of looking short term and also only looking at open rates. Because it's like, if you text it to everybody, the open rate is pretty much almost 100%. So you feel good. You're like, oh, that was really successful. And it doesn't mean it was successful. You might have made 100% of the people really upset or annoyed. And so you can't only track those kind of metrics of just open rate. If email's not working, it doesn't mean that text messages can't help sometimes. If you really have something urgent, if it really is appropriate, and the people getting it, again, this is a segmented group that want it and value it, it can work great. But if you're using it just because people aren't reading your emails, then I think we're going wrong. And we need to step back and say, well, why aren't they reading the emails? Because it's not because they don't read email anymore. We've talked about that. People read more email now than ever. So the answer is not because email doesn't work anymore. It's not because people don't read email. It's that they're not reading your email. And so you got to figure out what's wrong with that. And so hopefully some of these shows and the topics and things we're talking about are going to start helping you with a lot of those kind of things, because it is a real problem. But you got to resist that temptation to just say, okay, well, I'm going to text it to you now, because it may get a short-term result, but it's going to have long-term negative effects.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Claire, for that question. That does it for us on this episode of the Finding Uno Show. Thank you, as always, everybody, for listening, watching, wherever you're consuming this. Before we go, we're going to pass it over to our friend Liz to find out where Uno is today.
Thank you, Matt. Our friend Lizbeth from St. Finbar Parish in Burbank, California sent us this photo and told us that Uno has become the first and last thing that she sees every single day. Thank you so much for sharing this photo, Lizbeth, and we are super grateful for you and honored that we get to work with you. If you find Uno, snap a photo and send it to us at howdy@findinguno.com, and we may feature you in a future episode. If you leave us a review, we will also send you a pair of our highly coveted flock socks. So send us an email and let us know if you do that. And don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you next time on the Finding Uno Show.